Evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. My name is Rosann Santos. I am the Director of Alumni Engagement at John Jay College. And I always like to start with, I love my job. I love meeting John Jay alum. And I love introducing John Jay alum to you because the alum at the college are just so dynamic. And there is nothing but learning to be had from them. And tonight, I'm fangirling. We have two Latina judges from New York City, and that is just such a great role modeling for all of you who have aspirations to go into some level of the law. And even if you don't, it's just amazing to meet folks like them. Before we get started and I hand the mic over to Dean Byrne, a couple of housekeeping. If you require closed captioning, there's a little button at the bottom of your screen that should allow you to press it on and off for your own needs as you need them and as appropriate. We have disabled the chat. However, if you have any questions, the Q&A box is there available to you, and Dean Byrne will monitor the questions or myself as needed for our judges and for our guests. And finally, I do want to make an announcement to all of you to save the date. We are having virtual alumni reunion on April 22nd, 2021. It's going to be great. I know it cannot replace in person, but it's going to be close. Trust me, I am on it. And I hope you all mark it the date. It will be free for people to attend, and it's going to be an amazing time. So please mark that date. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Dean Dara Byrne, the Dean of Undergraduate Studies, and she is going to moderate this amazing discussion with our two alumni guests.
Hi, everyone. This session has been long in the making, and I'm so excited to be here this evening. Thank you for participating. You are about to hear from two spectacular leaders in justice and two alumni. I'm so excited about this. Judge Guzman and Judge Rodriguez really inspire me in terms of not just their leadership, but how they embody the values of John Jay and represent their communities to the highest level. I'm going to read a little bit about the judges so that you understand who is here tonight and who is out there representing John Jay on the bench. But the bios that I read are kind of shortened because their experience is really deep, and I would probably take up the entire session reading their bios because it's truly prolific. I'm going to start first with Judge Guzman. So Justice Wilma Guzman was born and raised in the Bronx and attended New York City public schools. She received her bachelor's from John Jay and earned her law degree by attending the evening program at St. John's, while also working full-time and raising two daughters. I know this resonates with many of you out there. After law school, she became a skilled and passionate trial attorney, eventually becoming a member of the $1 Million Advocates Forum. And that forum is a nationwide association of trial attorneys who've achieved a verdict of $1 million or more. Since 1998, Judge Guzman has held several judicial positions and now serves as a Supreme Court Justice in Bronx County. In 2019, Justice Guzman was reelected to her current position as Justice of the Supreme Court of the State of New York. She's also an adjunct professor at Pace and at CUNY. Aside from these accomplishments, Judge Guzman is an active member in the legal community. Just a few of her leadership positions include past president of the Latina Judges Association, past president of the Supreme Court Justices Association of the City of New York, and past president of the Puerto Rican Bar Association, among others. I'd like you to give a warm welcome to Justice Wilma Guzman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our second judge, who I had the pleasure of meeting in her court, because two of our John Jay recent alumni were in her court presenting a case. So that was really exciting for me to witness. Justice Rodriguez was born and born in the Dominican Republic and emigrated in the 1980s to join her parents in New York. She also attended public elementary and high school and graduated from John Jay College cum laude. Judge Rodriguez has a Master's of Science from the New School of Social Research and a JD from the City University of New York Law School. While at CUNY, she represented victims of domestic violence in Queens Family Court, and she co-founded the Main Street Student Legal Defense Fund, a fund created to assist law students in the representation of indigent clients and to create programs that would increase alumni involvement in public interest law. And I know for many of you out there, public interest law is a deep passion of yours. Judge Rodriguez also served as managing editor of the New York City Law Review. Among her distinguished accomplishments while in school, she received the Student Achievement Award and the New York State Bar Association Law Student Legal Ethics Award. She began her career as a special assistant corporate counsel for administration for children's services, and throughout her career, she's been very active in civic organizations such as the Dominican Bar Association and the Hispanic National Bar Association, just to name a few. In 2015, Mayor Bill de Blasio made her dreams come true by appointing Judge Rodriguez to family court. She was the first, I'll say it again, the first Dominican appointed by this mayor and the first appointed Dominican to sit in the Bronx family court. Currently, she handles child neglect or abuse cases, adoptions, and all aspects of foster care placement cases. She's also a member of the State and Local Family Court Judges Association and is currently co-chair of the advisory committee to the administrative judge on child protective issues, the co-chair of the Bronx Family Court Early Engagement Group, and the former secretary of the Latino Judges Association. In her spare time, she mentors and supervises law student interns. Now, please, a warm welcome for Judge Rodriguez. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dara, for that wonderful introduction.
So I'm going to get started by asking a few questions before opening it up to take questions from our attendees tonight. So those of you who are listening, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A box and I will incorporate them or ask the questions for you. So let's begin by asking, how did you get from John Jay to where you are now? Can you talk a little bit about your path?
Well, I guess I'll start. With John Jay, the gave me the ability to raise a family, work days, and go to school at night. So John Jay actually gave me the path to study, get an education, and set me on my journey, which eventually was law school and down the line on the bench. But in the middle, I took a detour because I actually wanted to go into law enforcement, FBI. That was a dream I actually had, which John Jay was the number one for law enforcement. Yeah. So that was my rhyme and reason for coming to John Jay. But being a mother with two children, being responsible, going away to 16 weeks to Quantico, you had to weigh that, and motherhood kicked in, and all of a sudden paths of your journey had to change for the good. So John Jay made my life to, in a way, to be flexible, to know how you can change paths, how you could read things that are sent to you. You know, I believe in the universe. I believe the universe sends you signs, and how it tells you, okay, maybe one door may close, but as one door is closing, another door is opening. And John Jay was able to give me that ability because I had a lot of great professors who were lawyers. And I worked as a secretary paralegal in a law firm. So I got exposed to the law field also without really having that idea that I would someday become a lawyer or go to law school. So John Jay propelled me in my journey of where I was heading. And really, if not for John Jay, I don't think I would have gone into the path that I was headed to.
Oh, thank you.
Um, how did I get to from John Jay? Um, I was born and raised in Santo Domingo, so I came here when I was 10 years old. So as Dara said, I went to elementary school, I went to high school here in New York. But with regard to John Jay, um, how I got to where I am from John Jay to now has been a host of stories that I have used to take advantage of opportunities. Um, I always have a plan B, and I always have a supportive, strong network to guide me. When I finished John Jay and I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Government and Public Administration, I applied to law schools. And being a bilingual student, foreigner and immigrant, no surprise, LSATs were not my forte. So I didn't do so well, and I applied to law school nevertheless. I was on a wait list, and I didn't want to waste time, so I went to my plan B. My plan B was to go to grad school. So I went with my law school papers, my law school essay, to see a dean at the New School for Social Research to discuss their going there part-time, because I was a part-time medical secretary at NYU Medical Center. Um, I worked there full-time and I went to John Jay full-time. I don't know, these crazy schedules, I am used to them. I don't know, but it just works out. Somehow you want something done, you give it to a busy person. So it has always been that way throughout my life. So I explained to the dean that I wanted to be a lawyer when I grew up. And after she reviewed my essay and after she reviewed my papers, she offered me a full scholarship on the spot. So I didn't know what to do. So I called my boss and I said, hey, listen, this is what's going on. What do you think? And she's like, tell the dean yes, and don't worry about it. We'll work out the details later. So years later, I graduated with a Master of Science in Urban Policy Analysis and Management. Then I tried law school and I said, okay, listen, this is what I'm going to do. This is going to be it. So let me apply for it again. And I applied to, at the behest of a John Jay professor, to a minority student summer program at Georgetown Law School. It was my first time away from home. I'm sorry about that. That's my dog. It was my first time away from home. And boy, was that an experience. After I finished that program, I was on a wait list at CUNY. So I reached out to them and I said, hey, listen, I'm on a wait list. I am in this program. I really want to go to your school. I want to do law in the public service, public interest law. And this is what I did. This is the paper. This is the summer program that I enlisted. I did really well in the program. And she said, well, listen, why don't you call me back when you get back in the city? And I said, no, I'd rather make the appointment right now. And she was my first stop as soon as I got to New York City. And the same story. I advocated for myself. And I said, look, this is what I want to do. This is the light at the end of the tunnel. This is where I see myself. And I am willing to work hard. My grades show that I'm willing to work hard. So don't focus so much on the LSAT. Look at everything. Look at the wrong person. Look at everything that I have done in terms of my participation at John Jay and my student achievements, as well as my academics. Don't just focus on the LSAT. And, it worked out really well because then I ended up going to CUNY, and that was the most wonderful experience in terms of law school. And then after CUNY, became a court attorney referee, which is a quasi-judicial position. Wait a minute. No, after CUNY, I became an 18B and an ACS attorney. And then I became a court attorney referee, and then I became a judge. So all my dreams have become true, but a lot of it has to do with perseverance, always having a plan B, and reaching out to your supportive network to guide you.
Thank you both for this. These are incredible messages because still today, this resonates so much with our students and the questions they're asking, particularly our students that have already have very full lives and multiple obligations and commitments. I'm just going to take a moment to introduce you to Karol Mason, the president of John Jay College, because aside from having the connection of a pathway to law school, the three of you have the connection of many firsts for your community, many firsts along your career. So I wanted to ask a little bit about the challenges and joys of being a trailblazer as a woman, as a Latina, as a person of color. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because still, many of our students are going to be the first of something, and that's a lot to carry on your shoulders. So
it's a burden, but at the same time, it's a responsibility. And it's a responsibility that you carry for the future generation, because I look at all the students that I get from John Jay, all the interns that I have, and I become like a mother to them. I'm sorry, I just get them, and all of a sudden they become my children, and I become very protective, and I see the challenge, because a lot of them do come talk to me, they confide in me, and they tell me what struggles that may have going. And to me, it's opening also for them their path, and giving them whatever advice I can, and counsel I can, to let them know whatever you're going through, you'll make it. It doesn't matter. It's only a challenge, and a challenge makes you a stronger person. Trailblazers go through pain. Trailblazers go through hardship. Trailblazers go through conflict and decision making and hard work. And we are constantly juggling, but we do it because we feel it, we're emotional, we're empathetic, we love it, and we know that whatever we're doing is for all those coming behind us. Okay. And that's what makes it all worth it. When I see all those interns that I get calling me, and still from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, sending me emails. I passed, I got the LSAT, I got into Georgetown, I got into Princeton, I got into St. John's, I passed the bar exam, I got this job down on Wall Street, or I'm in Dallas. I mean, my heart pumps like a mom. And it's like worth it. And you know what? And one thing I've learned, even if it's one more out in the mainstream.
yeah.
So if it's not dozens, and the ability to affect one as a trailblazer, I have done my job. And it was very difficult, because way back when, I loved trial work, I loved doing trials, and I was in the civil sector, where it was unheard of women, and women of color, doing trial work in civil litigation, because it was mainly an all men's world. And that was really breaking barriers. You had to prove yourself, not only that you were just as knowledgeable, but that you were able to carry two worlds, be a mother and also be a good trial attorney. So that was a trailblazing that had to be worked through, and convince the male counterpart, especially my bosses who were all male, that I could do the work just as good as anybody else. And maybe I had to sacrifice a little bit, family, just to be able to prove I'm worthy of being given those complex trial litigations that were being given to the men, because I could work just as hard, and I could multitask even better, because I have the ability to do so, while the men were only doing one job. So it's a hardship, okay? It's a hardship. I mean, and if there's any men on this webinar, I don't mean to put anybody down. I really don't. I'm just speaking the reality of what it was. We've come a long way, but yet there's more to go. Okay, it's better. But back then it was difficult trying to be a female trial attorney in the civil litigation. A little easier, but not as much in the criminal side. But that was one of the trailblazing. But the joy was being able to do the trial and accomplishing. And my joy was getting in that $1 million club that was all men and being able to join it also. So that was my joy at the end run. And I did that just before I got on the bench. So that was worth it.
You know, one of the things, and it's so good to see you, Judge Guzman. I'm used to seeing you in person at our
Likewise, I know.
and Judge Rodriguez. I will say that I don't know that young people understand how much joy we get. You mentioned that in seeing their success.
Yes.
Because, you know, while we may have been the first of many things, we certainly never want to be the last. And it's just, you know, I don't know that how I can get young people to understand how much pleasure I get in seeing their success, in seeing them take these roles and really go much further than we could have.
Yes.
And so for like Judge Guzman, I always viewed it as a responsibility, and I felt like I didn't have, which is not fair to myself, but I didn't have room to mess up because I was afraid that if I messed up, that it would take that much longer for the next person to come through.
Absolutely. And the challenges that come along with being a trailblazer is that if you're the first, you know, expectations are high, that you are perfect, that you know anything, you know, that you know more than anyone. And, you know, and if that's not the case, you know, you're expected to step back and be humble. But, you know, sometimes when people have high expectations and you know, and you try to work with what you have, you go forward and do the best that you can. And you keep on going and you keep on going. I never thought of myself as a trailblazer, but as someone who just had the courage to pursue the goal that I had in mind and not being afraid what I had to do to reach my goal. I didn't take no for an answer. I tried to take advantage of every opportunity, regardless of how bad the situation seemed at the time. You know, as a woman, as a Latina, as an immigrant, of course I encountered a few naysayers. But you know that I use that passion because I use that passion to keep on going forward, not to let it stop me and say, oh, well, you know, this person doesn't think that I will be doing well because I have an accent, because I'm a woman, because I don't belong in this group, because I'm not the right skin color or what have you. You know, I kept on going. I learned my strength. My mom was a seamstress in a sweatshop, then later a half partner, and then a full owner of a factory. So I developed a strong sense of self-worth. I learned from my father to always give back to the community. He was a political activist who always involved us in everything that he did. So we certainly went to plenty of meetings and things of that nature. So, you know, you get this joy of being a trailblazer through the experiences that you go through, and you give back. You give back by being a student leader, by participating in many local and community events, and you share your story with as many interns as you meet throughout your tenure, both when I was a referee and now as a judge. And it's true, you do get that sense of pride when your students come back and say, hey, you know, I really appreciate it, or just shoot a random check-in. I send them a random check-in and I say, hey, this is just a random check-in, just want to know how you're doing and how everything is going. And it works out really well because it keeps the connections throughout the years.
Can I just follow up on one thing that Judge Rodriguez said that I think that I remember getting this lesson as a Southerner in a law firm in Atlanta. And one of my Southern, well, he was a partner, I was a young associate, but he was talking to us. He said, you know, when you work with these Northern lawyers, they're going to underestimate you and think because you have this Southern drawl and then he said, use it to your advantage. And I took that even further. And so people are always underestimating me. And the key is not let that define you. That's
Correct.
their perception of you, not your own, and use it as an asset. And many times it's they looked up and they're like, how did that just happen? Because they had their expectations were so low they didn't see when I came around and beat them. I will. My favorite story is when I was in. I had to go to this meeting with the head of the appropriations for the Department of Justice in Congress, and I went with the legislative affairs people because I was controlling the money that they wanted me to put some roadblocks up about. And I was in this conversation with this powerful person. And I just sat there and I listened and I listened. And then I used his own words back at him. And he didn't see it coming. He goes, "You're awfully smart, Attorney Mason." That's what he said to me. And I knew what he was also thinking. But I just said, "You underestimated," in my head, "you underestimated me." I used your own words. And you got to be smart and strategic. You don't always have to prove yourself to people. You just need to
Right. And the
prove
thing is
yourself
that,
to yourself.
and the thing that as a woman is sometimes very difficult because we're always shy, or it's always, we always find it difficult to highlight your accomplishments. This is not about being cocky or presumptuous. This is about having the courage to move forward and be show your self-worth and show what it is that you're doing, and that you are able to do it just like the next person. And sometimes it's harder for women to do than it is for men.
Now, you're all pointing to some things that tie nicely to questions that are coming up in the Q&A box, and I'm just going to pull two of them together because one person asked, have you ever encountered imposter syndrome? If so, how do you manage it? While another person asked, how have you grappled with and overcome microaggressions or racism as women of color on the bench? So I want to put those two things together because I think it's very likely that you experience both of those things along the way, sometimes simultaneously. That microaggressions can make you question things about your belonging in some of those spaces, and at the other times microaggressions can affirm your resilience in those spaces. So maybe we could talk a little bit about microaggressions and imposter syndrome, and specifically I think what I'm hearing from these questions are strategies to overcome. How did you overcome?
Well, when I was first elected, um, since I did so much work in the Bronx, I was sent to Brooklyn. So no one actually knew me in Brooklyn, and it was like the new kid on the block. You know, they sent her here because she doesn't know anything, or she's new, she can't know what she why is she here? And then they see a woman, and then they see a Latina. So now it's three strikes. Okay, you're not from the county, you're a female, and then you're a Latina female. So it was trying now to do just exactly that. The aggression and showing that I belong there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically trying to what the president said, showing them and using their own words that you have the ability. You have to use composure, you have to use patience, you have to use integrity. So it's a different way of doing it on the bench. But you learn by indicating to them when you start quoting the law to them and telling them, wait a minute, that's not what the statute says. And this is what it actually indicates. And one thing, though, I've learned where coming along the ranks, as you would call it, you don't know everything. In life, you don't know everything. I don't know everything. I'm willing to learn everything, though. And I'm willing to tell my counsels before me, if something comes up and say, counsel, hold on, that might be something new. Give me a minute. I will do my own research, though. I won't rely on anyone else. I will take 5 and I will put my sleeves up and I will go and research it myself. as opposed to what I had when I was on trial and I knew the law, and yet whomever was before me was misquoting exactly the law that wasn't, and wouldn't even take 5 minutes to go and check it. So that made a big difference for me when I got on the bench and I said, wait a minute, I will not make that mistake. I will make sure I give the courtesy to counsels. And when I don't know something, I'm a big person. I can admit I don't know it. I don't know everything, but I can learn it and I will go research it. And that's how I got their respect, that I was big enough to say, counsel, let me just research that and give them the courtesy of the opportunity to go find out whether they're correct or I'm correct. And again, I will be big enough and go to them and say, counsel, in going back and researching, you were right. I might have missed a point with the facts or missed a point with the issue and the law, and now reviewing it and going back and readdressing it, it appears that it changes a little different. So it's how you address yourself to the court, how you're willing to indicate you're human, okay? And you can go back and reconsider. But if you start being stubborn and it's wrong, 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 and you don't even give them the respect to reconsider, the respect to listen to them, and the respect to at least give them their forum to represent their client, then that's where you start getting all those aggressions, all those you don't belong there, and all that stuff. So that's how you handle it. That's how I handle it as a trial attorney, and that's how I learned how to handle it also as I got onto the bench.
I agree with Judge Guzman, and I deal with it the same way. Um, Counsel knows since the first few minutes that they appear before me, this is what you get. I am as real as can get. I am uh, as rational, as practical as can be, and I don't. I am what I appreciate when people. I go around the table and I ask everyone what their positions are. I always treat everyone with respect, because I think that that goes a long way. If a person needs an extra few minutes, I would rather give that person an extra few minutes and let them know that I'm listening to them, that I'm hearing what their concerns are, um, and then apply, the law to the facts of the case. And I think that people appreciate that. I'm not afraid to tell counsel, no, I don't think that that case stood for that. If I know absolutely what that case stood for, I am not afraid of taking a break and thinking about the decision that I'm going to make. Every decision that I have made because I am comfortable making it after hearing from all sides of the table. And if I have to take a day or two to think about what I'm doing, especially in this area of child protection, when you have limited information, you don't have as much information as you want, and you always want more, more, more. But you make the decision that you are able to make with the information that you have. And you ask for discernment. I am a person of faith, and I have the serenity prayer in every office that I have, my home office, my work office, my roving room, and you ask for discernment and for the ability to make the right decisions. And if you don't make the right decisions, guess what? There's another court date, or you can reschedule the case and say, you know what, counsel, I've had an opportunity to think about, the points that you made, and have now changed my mind for whatever the reason.
What I love about what you've both said is giving yourself the freedom to say, I don't know. I find it liberating to admit what you don't know, but what you've also said is, but you're smart enough to figure it out.
Correct.
Yeah. I hope that the young people heard that.
Absolutely.
And
Thank
in
you.
fact, I just want to, I tell my interns, it's okay if you don't know something, but what I want you to do is ask questions.
Correct.
Don't sit there not knowing and pondering. Please ask me anything you don't know, because that's how you learn, is by asking questions or going to the books or wherever the information is. That's very important, though.
I don't let my fear of being rejected from asking what I need to ask. I tell myself, what's the worst that can happen? You know, they tell me no, they tell me no. You know, you always have to move forward, and you always have to ask and move forward. Decide, commit, move forward. That's the way to do it.
And that's a really important point, because courage to face possible rejection is an important part of the journey. I think sometimes we think about where people ended up, but not the important steps of the hard work along the way, which I think ties to a really great question in here from Judge Frias Colon, who asks, during your journeys, how did you deal with instances when things did not work out how you expected? What lessons did you learn from those experiences? Thank you, Judge Colon, Frias Colon, because you were right on time with this question.
Well, for me, I have something that I've always said, not only to myself, but I've passed it down to my kids. If you can't go in through the front door, you go in through the window. If you can't go in through the window, you go in through the chimney. If there's no chimney, you will create a door, a window, or a chimney, but you will make it happen. If you want it strong enough, bad enough, and you willed it, and you have those intentions, because it is your intentions that you put out there to the universe, it will come back twice, 3 times. It's just, it's there. It's that desire, those wishes and those intentions, they're heard. It's how much you're gonna go for it. That no is just not possible. No matter how many times they tell you no, it's just not possible. And I've heard no, like Judge Rodriguez, I heard no many times, and I said, okay, there gotta be another way. There's plan B, there's plan C. The alphabet goes all the way to Z. So I have a long way to go until I finally give up, but I'll know somewhere
Then you
along the
start
line.
back over at AA. After you
Exactly. So it's infinite.
One of the things I learned from being a parent is that, you know, you have to, I tell my kids, stop worrying about what other people's opinions are. And I tell them what other parents do with their kids is none of my business. So I apply the, you know, when things don't work out as you expect them to work out, I learn from them. And I learn to adjust next time the same issue comes around or the same situation comes around. And I, like Judge Guzman, I always try to find a way around things. I am not afraid to think outside the box and consider situations where, you know, the protocol has always been this way. You know, I'm not afraid of stretching a little bit of how things should be if I believe that in the end result, it will be, for example, in the child's best interest in whatever it is that I do. Always find a way around it.
I just wanted to add to what Judge Rodriguez said earlier about being a person of faith, whatever your grounding faith is. I also believe that sometimes when I've faced a rejection or wall, that it just wasn't my opportunity right then. That wasn't where I was supposed to be. And for me, one of the biggest confirmations of that was I wanted to be on the board of trustees at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I got rejected. 2 years later, another opening came up and a friend of mine said they wanted me to go after it again. I was like, I don't know that I want to go through that again. And he was so funny. He said, it's your call, but I sure will be disappointed. I was like, okay, that's so much. It's really my call. If you don't, but what I learned was that had I gotten it 2 years before, I wouldn't have been on the board when it was time to pick the new chancellor. And so sometimes you don't get something because it's not your time for it to happen, for you to be in the place for something else. So something to think about.
I appreciate that, Carol. Very, very true words. I've experienced that myself. There's a great question in the chat, and thank you to our attendees who are asking fantastic questions. Becoming a judge or even a clerk for a judge is becoming more and more competitive. What skills and experiences do you recommend law schools and recent graduates pursue to prepare themselves for an application to the bench?
Well, you have two questions there because you have a law clerk.
A law school.
One is one, and then naturally the bench is another. Some individuals use the position of law clerk to eventually go onto the bench. I went onto the bench from private practice. I was never a law clerk or anything. I was fortunate enough to go from private practice onto the bench. So I will speak from my experience as a private practitioner and going on to the bench. What I saw was required. Uh, First and foremost, what I see now, especially with the young generation, is social media, which I'll be talking about in another event with in a young school. You have to be careful what you put with social media, okay? Because it will come, and please excuse my French, but there's no other way of putting it, will come to bite you right in the, and I'll put it nicely, in the rear end, okay? And those are things that will come and bite you if you're looking for a job, your credit, or anything like that, but especially if you're going for public office. And being a judge is a public office. It can be competitive. It cannot, it depends what route you go. So social media, as of now, you have to start thinking, what are you putting out there in social media? Another thing is your community service. Community service is very important in volunteering in different types of community service to provide, because those are things that will be looked upon as a candidate for the judiciary. Your impeccableness as to your word. How do you deal with your adversaries? How do you deal with your clients? And you know what? If nothing else you have, your word is your honor. And that is so important. As a trial attorney, as an attorney, because naturally you have to be an attorney, depending on what route you take. Some judgeships are 5 years, most are 10 years. So you have to be in practice for some time. So as you're practicing as an attorney, it's very important, your ethics as an attorney. And basically your finances are going to be looked at. There's a lot of things that will be looked at once you become an attorney, but you're at a very early stage right now, from college to law school. So what I see the most important issue that comes up is social media, is keeping that social media, and naturally your background not being an issue of any kind of detriment to you in the future. But I see social media becoming an issue in a lot of areas, both criminally and civil, in criminal matters and in civil matters, becoming a big issue. And you give up your rights. There's no right of privacy. So if anyone out there believes they have a right of privacy, no, you don't. Okay. And that's very important.
I echo Justice Guzman's sentiments. I would also say that as for law clerk, you should read a lot, know a little bit of everything, be a good writer, be a good speller, participate in the social clubs, in the college social clubs. I was the vice president of the Law Society at John Jay. I participated in student government. I participated as a senior rep. committee on clubs if they still have it. And I was also part of the ethnic association. I think back then it was called the Dominican Club. So the participation in these social clubs and they open up an opportunity because those social clubs not only expose you to different people that can become lifelong friends, but they also give you access to information because there's a lot of information that is relayed to the clubs that are in school about different work opportunities. Um, and I would say for judgeship, also your community service and an extension of participation is the engagement in bar associations. It is such a small world when it comes to the legal. It's a big field, but in a sense, it's also a small field because you're going to run into the same circles of people. I used to kid around before saying that, you can't wear the same suit in the same week because if you go to different events, you might run into the same person. So you have to really be very active, be out there, have your eyes open and your ears open as well, because the opportunities are there. And this is how you're able to advance in the future and to get the opportunities that you want. You have to also guard your reputation. Your reputation is gold. Your word is definitely gold, and people are going to hold you to what you say.
Thank you. But I want to go a little further into this because I think many people use social media to speak out or to speak out about important issues as well as to um, build their reputation or to highlight or stand out in a crowd. And there are two questions in the Q&A that I'm going to try to bring together in terms of how do you cultivate mentoring relationships with professionals like yourselves, other judges who can guide you, but also how do we make sense of establishing your reputation, or in contemporary terms, people would say building your brand? Is there a role for that for lawyers or law students?
There is, and you could do it as long as the keywords, that's the only issue. The keywords that may stand out. Unfortunately, we're living in a time and age where certain keywords may interject bullyism. Okay. So if you start using those words, it may open up a door that an individual could be bullying someone. That's
Mhm.
an example. Okay. Um, Threats, the words that may spark. Oh, it's a domestic threat, meaning a domestic violence threat. Okay. So it's not that you're totally prevented from using social media for your reputation, for your business, speak out on issues or anything like that. It's that you just have to be careful not to infringe on words that could bring back and that now focus on you in a way that you did not intend. And I understand because I have young grandkids, okay, that sometimes may think a certain way and don't think of the repercussions, and I understand that, and I have also kids that even at their age may not think of the same thing, but as long as they're aware, because we all have to learn at a certain age, we are going to be responsible for our own um, actions. All right. But as long as they become aware, and that's all that's very important, to become aware that if you want to take a certain route, and with law and the legal system, they're going to be very strict. They're going to scrutinize you to a certain extent, because then you're going to become those in front of the public that are maybe also doing the scrutinizing. So it's a double-edged sword. It really becomes a double-edged sword, because As judges, we can't comment. You know, we're our hands. I always say I have handcuffs and I have a muzzle, because as much as I may want to comment, as much as I may want to speak as the citizen, I can't. So I have to be careful in certain topics and certain ways because of the position. So, as students in the future, depending on where you want to go, what your aspirations is, if it's law enforcement, and I'm sure there's a lot out there because of John Jay's reputation of having a big law enforcement community, I'm sure then again, they have to just be aware. That's all it is. It's not that it's going to stop them. It's not that they cannot. It's just an awareness. That's all it is.
I wholeheartedly agree, especially in this day and time when there is so much tension, racial bias. Even as you may not be ill-intentioned in something that you say, but because you may feel so passionate about an issue, you may just say the wrong thing at the wrong time. And when you're going to be involved in the law, you are held to a higher standard. You are scrutinized differently because you are expected to quote unquote know better than to say X and then to say Y. So I would say tread lightly, try to stay away from extremely controversial issues. And if
Mhm.
this is something that you're passionate about, then be passionate, but also be respectful and be careful with what you say. Think about,
Yeah.
if someone takes a look at this message or this post, 5 years from now, is this something that I would allow, my 8-year-old child to see or to talk about?
Mhm. It's great. Judge Frias Colon says in the Q&A that I think is important for everyone to hear. It's important to pursue your goals and make it hard for them to say no. And so with that, there is a question in here from Siobhan Toscano, who is building quite a career in terms of serving as an administrative law judge at Traffic Violations Court in Brooklyn. And she's wondering about what advice you both might have about preparing to run in an election and for trying to get an appointment. Are there particular things you must do to get to the positions that both of you are in?
I can only speak about the appointed process because I went through the mayor's committee. Although I went and prepared, my plan B was civil court, my plan A was family court, plan B was civil court. So I went through both in terms of going through the political clubs and trying to, meet with the different elected officials and get their quote unquote blessing. But I went through the mayor's office, and in there is a part of it that is political, but is based on merit, what your accomplishments have been, your participation in the community, your participation in the bar associations, and in participation in screening panels. I mean, there's where your reputation is valuable and key. I didn't run for office. I helped someone run for office. And that in itself is a different world because there are a lot of things that happen behind closed doors, for good or for bad.
Thank you.
I had an election the first time when I ran for civil court, Bronx County citywide. So I had to have an election, and although they say you should have no political, but I mean the reality is it is political, and you have to meet with the different political clubs within the county. I was county-wide, so I had to meet with every political club in each county. And I was not one coming from within the court system. I was actually coming from outside the court system, although I had volunteered within the law department of the political system. So I was known by some, but not by all. I had to actually indicate how I was so qualified. And my trial experience really helped. And because I was a trial attorney, I was a trial attorney for 10 years, trying cases all over the 5 borough, well, no, 4. I never went to Staten Island, but I did go to Nassau and Westchester. So I was able to explain the value I had on being on the bench and also being someone that tried cases. But the biggest thing was raising money, the ability, because it's when you have a race that may be contested, it's costly. It was costly then in comparison to how much it was, but it's even more costly now. So that's important. Those are considerations when you're going to run for an election, and you're going to have an election that someone else is going to also run. It's the cost of that election. One, do you have the finance? Two, do you have the ability to raise that finance? And three, are you willing to maybe take out loans, put a finance, a mortgage on your home if you don't have one, remortgage? There's a lot of things that go into that.
Wow.
Yeah. The second time around when I ran for Supreme Court, it's through a nomination process. So it's a little different. And that's a committee nomination where they nominate certain individuals depending on how many slots are empty in Supreme Court. But again, you can have someone opposing the incumbent or someone deciding they want to run for the same seat. I was fortunate enough, I had no one the first time I ran. And recently, when I ran again for re-election, I was fortunate enough, I had no one running against me. So, but it can get costly if you have someone running against you in either a primary or an election. So it just depends. If you have the backing naturally of those in your political party, then it's even better because you could share those expenses with others that are also running. So there's a lot of things involved.
Thank you. That's very eye-opening.
Mhm.
I want to be respectful of your time because I promise we will end on time. So here's a final question for you both. If you could finish this sentence, if it weren't for John Jay.
That exposed me to internships opportunities at the district attorney's office, at the New York Department of Investigation. They encouraged me to participate in the different clubs, the different student leaders, where I built my network of support. I would not be where I am today.
If it wasn't for John Jay, I wouldn't be able to multitask the way I do. A family, a job, and all that comes with the responsibility of work, home, uh, being a trailblazer, being able to lead interns. Yeah, because there were nights that I didn't sleep, and yet I was able to go to work, go to John Jay, take care of my family, and still work around the clock. So if it wasn't for John Jay, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I always say that if it wasn't for John Jay.
Thank you.
Sleep is a commodity.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for saying this, because right now we have students that are questioning whether it's even worth it. And your presence here tonight, and hopefully you can see from the questions that were being asked, are hitting the right note with people who are out there that are inspired right now, are encouraged, are probably going back to their homework to put in a little bit of extra time, because it is about the work and the skills, but also the perseverance, the commitment that goes into the full package of being a trailblazer. And as Judge Frias Colon said, you also want to make it hard for them to say no. And I cannot imagine anyone saying no to either of you. So thank you so much for
Thank
being who
you.
you are.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
this opportunity.
Thank you. And for attendees out there, please remember that the alumni reunion is Thursday, April 22nd. Please save the date. President Mason, did you want to say anything?
Just wanted to say thank you for letting me butt into your conversation, and to hear that you two are both so inspiring, and Justice Guzman, you know, I look forward to you being back in person, and
Yes.
Judge Rodriguez will get you here as well. But I just want to say thank you for inspiring all of us. You inspire me as well. And we will be taking your stories to our students to be able to say, this is what you can be. This is what you can do. See these two fabulous women. So thank you.
Thank you. And always available to John Jay. I'm
Yep.
only an email away.
I did tell you when I met you, I will
Yes.
take you up on.
I told you.
As I say, my door's always open.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a
And
good
thank
night.
you, Dara, for moderating the conversation.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night all.